Eleni, where are we right now?
So we just left from Chromatic Coffee, which is on Lincoln and Azurai, and I wanted to start there because that is where I started meeting my San Jose neighbors. I started seeing women's mechanics classes advertised at Good Karma Bikes, and it was a combination of Good Karma Bikes, Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition, and San Jose Bike Party that kind of encouraged me to keep on coming back down to the South Bay for all the activities, these healthy, outdoor, friendly activities, all centered around the bike.
What brought you to reside in San Jose?
So I wanted to live a more urban lifestyle
Than previous?
Yeah, so I grew up in San Bruno and grew up in Foster City. And then I went to college in Davis after I transferred from College of San Mateo. Davis was so different from the Bay, a lot more slow-paced, a lot more rural, but everything was pretty compact, and it was walkable and it was bikeable, and I found my mental health and my mood was so much improved by spending less time in the car, less time fighting traffic, that I tried to keep that biking behavior with me when I came back to the Bay. And then, like I was saying, I got involved with all these activities after work, and I was always on Caltrain, taking the train down here to do those, those type of activities, and decided I should just try to move down there. I'll still be commuting up to work, but at least I'll be able to stay out late, come home in San Jose and get a night's sleep and then get back on the train the next morning. That's exactly how it worked out. So that was in 2019. I moved down here.
So 5 years in San Jose. I'd say San Jose has an interesting urban character in how flat it is.
Yeah.
There are tall buildings, but I've heard that part of the reason the city looks the way it does is because of the airport. Mm-hmm. And maybe that flight patterns prevent the city from really having much more denser downtown. Mm-hmm. But it's also a pretty sprawled out valley. And I was wondering what kinds of urbanity or urbanism you've found most to appreciate about the city since moving here.
Yeah. Well, compared to the suburbs of the peninsula, there is a lot more commerce, transit down here. So I've lived in 2 neighborhoods in San Jose. I've only lived in two different places since I moved here. And actually during the pandemic, the place where I first lived down here was not suitable for work from home. And I mean, this is not, that was never gonna work. It was so crowded and cramped. I literally only had a room to come and keep my shit in and sleep at night. There was not even a desk. But that neighborhood, we're actually coming up on it soon, has grocery stores and a CVS and coffee shops and a gym and bike shops and a post office, everything I needed, literally within 3 blocks. It was an apartment right off of a really nice commercial strip area. I mean, I was hooked. I just couldn't get enough. I was so excited to wake up every morning and be like, which shop do I want to walk to? There's a used bookstore right down the street. I mean, it was amazing. It's truly right here. We could take a quick spin if you want to see. Yeah, so there's the FedEx where I do a lot of printing for work, and Chipotle if I'm really desperate. U-Haul, I would always have to rent U-Hauls to take canopies and bike racks to events, so it was really convenient to be here. Car shop for when I needed to get my car fixed. I never had to leave this 1 mile strip. It was amazing. Uh-huh. And the train station is right back there, so if I did need to leave town, I was so close to a transit hub and I could do whatever I needed to do. Yeah. So the apartments that I lived in were those guys right back there. This neighborhood is called the Garden Alameda, and where I live in downtown is sort of on the southern edge of the downtown core. And that area is called Spartan Keys and Guadalupe, Washington. I'm right in the middle of 3 neighborhoods, the downtown core, Spartan Keys, Guadalupe. So where I live now, there's a lot more business buildings. That's where some of those skyscrapers are. San Jose skyscraper is like 6 stories or taller. It is partly due to the flight path that there's a height restriction on the buildings, but the flat topography of the valley means that it was just so easy for land speculators to buy up land and build out instead of up. You know, there are very few barriers to work around to prevent somebody from just taking the easy development pattern of single-family homes sprawling out for miles and miles. I read a book by Anne-Marie Todd. She's a professor at San Jose State, and her book is called Valley of the Heart's Delight, which is what this area used to be called. And it's a collection of primary source materials of how the farmers and the original residents of this agricultural valley felt about development, about commercial development and residential development just slowly buying up their agricultural land. And it turns out that part of the perfect confluence of events was that some of the orchards were aging out naturally, and the farmers had to choose, should I plant another generation of fruit trees, or should I sell out to the real estate developers?
I was actually exactly going to ask you, where did you learn this history? Because I think a lot of people have a curiosity about it, but what led you to reading this book that you mentioned about local history? Have you always been interested in local history, or?
I guess so. Even the history of El Camino being, you know, a trade route and being a connector between San Francisco, all the missions in California. Yeah, I find it interesting. It's good. I think it just enriches your life to know a little more history about where you are.
What were the attitudes about this transition of Santa Clara Valley? Is that what it's called, this region? Yeah. The Santa Clara Valley?
Exactly.
What were the attitudes about changing this whole area's land use from agricultural farming to residential and office space? And how would you describe San Jose as a city today?
Oh man, I spend a lot of time thinking about this. How much time do we have? Cool. You know, progress is divisive. Not all of the farmers or residents had the same opinion. One thing that Anne-Marie's book claimed is that there was sort of a sense of inevitability. It was the 1940s and 50s, and things were changing very fast all over the place. And so some people who were proponents of the change were the land speculators who stood to make a lot of money. Some were farmers who were against the change and wanted to keep their traditional way of life, but it wasn't penciling out. So they had to sell out. There was like no financial choice, really. Some people thought, like, this is great. We're going to become modernized, diversifying the type of income. That's the trail over there. Diversifying the economy of the Santa Clara Valley was a big argument in favor of moving away from strictly being agricultural production. So there were a lot of reasons to do it. And there were a lot of folks who fought back, just like, I see parallels, just like we want to fight for more balance in how the streets are allocated toward cars versus people. Some people wanted to, they fought to maintain a balance between, we don't want to just be office parks and stroads, we want to keep some agricultural heritage. And there are parks, like on the south side, Marshall Cottle Park was land owned by the Cottle family, and they refused to sell out. And to this day, it's actually a county park in the middle of like neighborhoods. And they still honor the agricultural heritage. They have master gardener classes there. You can, take a quiet stroll. There's like ancient oak trees there that they've kept. So a place like that.
So you were just describing this public park that was gifted, I guess, to the city under the condition that the land be an open space. And we just entered arguably a public park. Is that fair to say? What we're biking on right now?
Oh, this is not that.
This is a different, this is different. This is a trail. I don't know which.
This one is the Guadalupe River Trail.
And it runs north into the bay?
Correct. You can take it all the way to Alviso. Alviso has a long shipping and canning history. So if you weren't growing fruit in the valley, come the early 1900s to the 1920s and 30s and 40s, if you weren't growing the food, you were canning it or processing it or shipping it.
Uh-huh.
So there were rail lines and shipping. I don't know about a big port like they have in Oakland or San Francisco, but they did have shipping barges that would go up the bay from Alviso area. Yeah, so just like the Marshall Cottle thing, the details are, don't quote me on every detail of land ownership and who sold what to who. But
so I guess things really changed post World War II. Was the moment in time where things really shifted agricultural to quote unquote modern land use.
Yeah, that's the narrative. Is that how it was in San Mateo County too?
Yeah. That's at least my understanding.
So that mural?
Yeah.
Part of a whole installation.
By the same artist?
Sort of. It was curated by one art gallery. One guy coordinated a bunch of different muralists to paint murals along this trail. What do you think of the trail?
It's awesome. It's got a lot of awesome nature. We just got by the river or creek, and I noticed it was paved over, or it had pavers. So it's not quite like a fully natural river.
Correct. Yeah, it's very much man-made, kind of channelized. Yeah, I mean, when... You know how rivers work. If it was not channelized, it would be in its natural state. This whole valley was like a...
Delta?
Kinda, yeah. It's like the marshy bottom edge of the bay.
Yeah, paving a trail like this wouldn't be possible if that water hadn't been centralized.
Right. And they've also put a lot of the creeks underground. And now I'm a fan of the idea of daylighting the creeks. They channelized them and paved over them, and cool, we can drive over them. They're not in the way. But that's also such a departure from the natural order. I'm not really a fan.
Yeah, the same is true in San Mateo of creeks being put underground using huge ass concrete underground tubes. I'm forgetting the technical word for that.
Yeah, if you don't have the technical industrial language, we barely have language for the idea of putting a creek underground.
Yeah, wow.
It just sounds impossible to do, yet humans have done it.
Well, something I've learned really recently that I'm not an expert in either is how the issue of drainage of stormwater is such a factor in these decisions, and not just the decision of putting natural waterways underground, but even street design and why American streets by and large look identical with their distinctive curbs and the curb cuts that are really wide. Basically why it's really hard to put in bike lanes in the US that aren't just gutters is that they're maximally designed for stormwater.
What? Yeah. The answer is stormwater, not curbside parking.
Design and engineering of a roadway is absolutely destroyed by water. Like the materials that roads are made out of, the reason potholes develop is because water either sits on top of them, like a chunk gets torn out and water fills it and just causes accelerated deterioration of the roadway, or water gets underneath. And so any standing water on the road rapidly accelerates its demise.
Got it. Wow.
I don't quote me on that as an expert, but it's something I've noticed about how all American curbs and roadways look the same in that water. Yeah.
informed guess.
But yeah, this is awesome. I mean, it's hard not to recognize around here, you know, signs of homelessness. Like we're biking by, I don't know, it looks like a garbage dump, illegal garbage dumping.
Yep.
And I know San Jose is in the news. I mean, there's Supreme Court case changes of the last year or two, which basically free cities from having to provide homeless with housing if you try to evict them using force from public land. So is this a flashpoint issue in San Jose? What's going on there?
So I'm a little confused. I think the court case you might be talking about is the Grants Pass decision.
Yeah.
And I thought the deal there was that the decision was actually that you cannot evict someone if there's no shelter bed for them. And we do not have enough shelter beds for the thousands of people who are living on the streets or on the creek trails right now. There was a ballot measure to raise funds to address the homelessness crisis called Measure E. And Measure E funds were intended, and the voters approved. The voters were given this message when they voted to add on the sales tax or parcel tax or whatever, wherever the money comes from. The flashpoint that I'm getting to is that these funds were earmarked for permanent affordable housing, like permanent supportive housing with resources for people who end up on the street due to mental illness or just general instability. And because we don't have enough shelter beds, that those funds are, the current mayor wants to reallocate those funds away from permanent supportive housing toward more temporary emergency interim housing.
Okay. So temporary housing versus permanent structures.
The type of place where someone might stay for 6 months till they can get their feet under them, but they're not intended to be like a permanent home for you to live in forever now.
What's the flashpoint? Is there a lawsuit? Is there resident groups that are trying to?
I would say definitely to the resident groups. I don't know about lawsuits. If any of these like neighborhood resident, homeless advocacy groups are suing the city, I haven't heard about it. But they protest, they show up to city council meetings and they protest and try to have their voices heard that, hey, this money is supposed to go to like long-term solutions. But the fact is that we, in my opinion, and again, I'm not an expert, but I try to read all sides and stay informed. To me, it seems like if there's literally nowhere to offer the people who are living here in the cold and the dirt and the violence and the fires and the floods, get the money to build interim housing, create tiny homes, create safe parking spaces. It's really hard to not use us versus them language of the housed and the unhoused. The place that I live has an empty building next door, an empty, basically like a duplex type thing, like a single story duplex. And since I moved into my current house 5 years ago, the duplex has been empty and there have been squatters after squatters after squatters. And they're just literally looking for shelter. It doesn't bother me to have neighbors who aren't paying rent in a building. Like, I don't care, that's not my building. They're not cheating me out of rent. I don't know who landlords the empty building next door. I wish that they would like clean it up and let people live there in a reasonable way. But also, it's 4 walls and a roof, and there are thousands of neighbors out here who need 4 walls and a roof. So like, okay, come on in, whatever. However, there have been house fires next door. There's trash dumped, into our bin and then overflowing out of our bin. It impacts neighbors in the downtown and in other areas tremendously. I never want to say like, oh, woe is me that I have to witness homelessness. I feel blessed that I have to witness it and not experience it. But it breaks my heart. I empathize when I put myself in someone's shoes who's sleeping out at night. I'm like, oh my God, you must be fucking freezing.
Yeah.
I wish you didn't have to go through that. So,
Yeah.
if we needed more interim housing, take the funds and build it. Help get people out of the creeks. Help get people into shelter. But there must be housing experts who know better if there is or is not enough interim housing. Do we need to be reappropriating funds that were meant for permanent supportive housing to interim housing? To me, from the outside, it looks like it because I see so much unaddressed, unsheltered homelessness. But that's me.
Well, we're biking by the San Jose Mineta International Airport over here. Have you ever bicycled to the airport?
Yeah, I love this mural. And yes, I've biked to the airport. They have bike link lockers at the airport.
Are you able to lock your bike in there for more than a day?
Yeah, 5 cents an hour, and I used 3 days.
Okay.
I went to Portland for 2 nights, and when I came back, my bike was fine, and I still had, you fill the card with $20, and I filled mine up like 3 years ago, and I think I still have like $7 left on it.
Nice. If you could change one thing about your neighborhood, let's say your immediate neighborhood rather than the whole city of San Jose, because the city of San Jose is like 1 million residents or something, more than 1 million residents.
900,000.
Ooh, okay. So what's one thing you would change about your neighborhood?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is maybe a nice grocery store, like a Trader Joe's type place or a little not super chain market. Yeah, that's the first thing that I always say is I just wish I had, a less than 10, 15 minute walk to get a fresh tomato.
Yeah.
But that's not that bad. I wish they would eliminate curbside parking and let people walking and people biking have a little more like room to breathe. Downtown already has a great quick build bike network with flex posts and green paint and protected intersections and bulb outs. So I love that. I would definitely revolt if they tried to take that away from me.
How long ago did the protected bike lanes go in your neighborhood?
Also about 5 years ago. That was under Mayor Sam Liccardo, who's the congressman now, representing our district in the House of Representatives. And the city Department of Transportation worked with SVBC, the Bike Coalition, to do some outreach rides to accustom people to using the bike lanes. And those were some of the first group rides that I came down from Foster City. I was like, oh my God, a bakery ride, that sounds delicious. That's when I started to fall in love with how easy it is to talk to people when you're biking next to them, and you always have one topic in common at least. I like your bike. Yeah. And then you can just see if you vibe from there. And sometimes you don't, and sometimes you really do. You make great new friends. And that just kept happening to me every group ride that I went on. And so now that group rides program of SVBC, that's the program that I've been managing for the last 3 years since I worked at the coalition. They had a lot of turnover and churn in the Great Resignation. So then I've kind of taken over that program, and I love it. I'm very kind of protective of it, and I want it to flourish. I love training the group ride leaders who can take that joy and bring it to their own neighborhoods. Yeah, it's kind of hard my family and my friends will tell you, it's very hard to overestimate the impact that the biking community and lifestyle has had on my life trajectory. I just turned 30 last October. So it was like the decade of the bike between graduating college and now. Yeah. Additionally, those bike mechanic classes at Good Karma, those are incredible. I just, on the record, I want to say that women are discouraged from making mistakes, period. And a great way to understand that it's okay to make mistakes is by wrenching on your own bike, your own mode of transport, and this fear that I might get something wrong. It just slowly gets replaced with a healthier way of thinking about things, which is, I'm confident that I can learn to do it right. And it was just transformative for me. So that's just, yet another way that bikes can enrich your life, open you up to ways of thinking, ways of being.
So I totally echoes for me. I think something I'm super passionate and curious about, especially when it comes to meeting neighbors. Well, what you're describing, both about this bike shop, learn to be your own bike mechanic events, and organizing group bicycle riding events around this region. What are some tips that you have? I mean, I think a lot of our audience probably has never been on a group bicycle ride before. And maybe there are some hardcore audience members who are interested, like I am, in what makes for a good event. Like, how do you get the ball rolling on your first neighborhood bike ride? Whether you have a local bike coalition like Silicon Valley Bike Coalition or not, right?
Well, trend setting is kind of difficult. You either, find a magic, or if you don't have a magic, find a buddy and do it together, because two people hosting a ride is already more social than one person hosting a ride.
So co-host, find co-host.
I think finding a co-host is a great strategy. I don't know if everybody in your audience has that. Maybe people can scour around for one other friend that might be interested, or maybe you have a lot of biking friends who would be totally down. What makes for a good event? So I think for a group ride, you only need two people.
Yeah.
Like me and Max are kind of on a group ride right now. But yeah, I would say start with 3, 6, 10 people. Plan ahead of where you're going, because it makes it more comfortable when you're confident in where to turn and where to position yourself in the lane. Know where you're going. Confident leadership is helpful. I don't know, bring some music, have a cool destination, we're just going for ice cream and then we're going home, or we're going to bring our hammocks and we're going to hammock at the park and then we're going to ride home. Or we're going there, the city's showing an outdoor movie screening and we're going to bike there, or have concerts in San Mateo. So finding a reason to do it can be fun. At this point, my friends and I will, we just want to spend time together and haven't gotten our spins in for the day. So we'll just, we don't know where we're going. We have no destination or music, but we're going to go for a group ride anyways.
It sounds like connecting to existing events, like going together as a group to an event that someone else might even be holding is a tactic.
Absolutely.
Are there partners to these kinds of activities? Obviously the government is a potential partner in having a Parks and Recreation department, or the Public Works department, or even the police department or fire department. But outside of government partnerships, what are some maybe businesses or non-bike organizations that you've found to have a lot of positive affinity for having neighborly events like a group bike ride? Are there allies that are
Yeah, I could name 1,000 allies within San Jose, and we can go from there, extrapolate out.
Yeah.
So, okay, one business that comes to mind is called Park Station Hashery. And the owner of that restaurant, it's like a bistro / they got beers on tap, and a big patio with a ton of bike parking, and you can sit in line of sight of your bike, and it's in a nice neighborhood, so the streets are pretty quiet. They do a 2-wheel Tuesday deal to encourage ridership and just to celebrate, hey, if you come on a bike, whether you love biking or you're only here because you get half off a beer, or I guess whole off a beer, buy one, get one. They're definitely allies because they integrate the concept of biking as a mode of transportation. not just like something to get fit or compete.
Did you ask them, do you single them out as a possible partner business?
I've been doing it for years. It's like been their thing. The guy runs bike camping trips. His name is Lou.
Okay.
He's actually Anne-Marie Todd, the author's partner. So I met them like separately, and then I went over. Lou told me they needed dog sitting, and I went over to their house, and his partner and I started talking, and I realized she was the author of this awesome history book that I had read last year. Yeah, and that's how I met my neighbor.
Nice.
So I don't know, like, yeah, I mean, family-friendly businesses might be interested in community building. You don't have to necessarily frame it as like a bike event, but it's more broader than that. It's a community building event. It's a healthy, outdoor, free, family-friendly activity event.
Yeah.
I get this a lot when I say I work for the Bike Coalition. You know, there are two responses. People's eyes glaze over because they're not into bikes, or their eyes light up because they're like totally infected by the love of bikes.
Yeah.
And so if I'm trying to hook someone, I usually don't frame it in terms of bikes. I say, I work for a nonprofit that tries to make our local built environment more welcoming to people walking and biking. We try to build family-friendlier spaces that are safer for everybody, like stuff that people generally can get on board with. Because bikes are kind of polarizing. People can get really angry or like get triggered by, you know. Yeah.
Well, that's a really great framing, because it's not just about getting people to ride bikes, which is a kind of a dictator-like thing to say to people, but I think about other active modes of transportation like walking or jogging or...
Yeah, your scooter or a skateboard, longboard.
Yep.
Pushing your kids in a stroller.
Are there... I mean, in the same way you could organize a group bike ride, you could organize a group walk, right?
Yeah.
Are there any organizations doing that kind of neighborly activity?
I have a friend who works to get Latino women out hiking. So she does monthly or bi-monthly hikes for communities that have a harder time getting access to the outdoors. There are nonprofits dedicated specifically to walkability, like Cal Walks or America Walks. And then there are pop-up local groups like San Jose Roll Call or Skating with Friends in San Jose. A lot of these are just like names of Facebook groups or Instagram accounts where people can follow on if they want to get into it. Yeah, it's a way of organizing the community and connecting with people in a way that is being robbed from us by this digital world of DoorDash and Uber Eats and, you know, groceries deliveries. You kind of actively have to push back against that and decide that I'm going to put in the effort that it takes to like meet people face to face and create spaces for people to connect with each other.
Yeah, no, I think we're in the epicenter of DoorDash. Like, DoorDash started in Palo Alto.
We're in the belly of the beast, no doubt.
And yeah, COVID really created behavior change for the arguable worse in how people's...
It's like it made our digital isolation like even worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. And biking was a way to survive the pandemic and still with that like a lower risk of infection or transmission, to still be social, still get sunshine, still interact, and, you know, do group activities that were objectively speaking safer than gathering for a coffee or having a house party.
Yeah. We're 5 years past COVID's appearance. When you think about San Jose and your neighborhood in 5, 10, 20 years, whether you're still living there or not, what do you kind of foresee? Do you see DoorDash style staying at home for your meals persisting, or do you see the city becoming more vibrant in some fashion?
Well, you know, I know some of the plans. Sometimes I call San Jose's bike plan more of a bike idea, because when it's time to actually restripe the road, block by block, what is different on the street compared to the plan? The plan didn't go block by block. The plan went by like corridors. And so the street width changes, and, you know, the class 2 or even the class 4 that is outlined in the bike idea isn't necessarily going to like work on the ground. So I know that on my block in specific, there's planned to be a frontage road with a concrete separated barrier. We already have a buffered bike lane. So the plan is in my immediate neighborhood to make it more bike friendly and continue to build out the bike network. But that's infrastructure, and I think your question is more about sociology.
Yeah. I mean, independent of changes to the road design, I'm gonna try and adjust your GoPro because it's definitely declined height-wise. There you go. Yeah, that's good. Independent of the change to street infrastructure over the coming years, one thing that you alluded to that was pretty cool, spiking past earlier, is the mural and public art. And I've always felt from visiting San Jose that there is a lot of public art. Is there public art in your immediate neighborhood, or is there somewhere?
See a big, vibrant Mexica themed mural, and there's a dog sitting business along the back alley that has like dogs painted on the wall.
So private art, or the art was paid for by the business?
Maybe. Or maybe they donated their wall to the muralist. Not really sure. It was featured in a mural ride. San Jose has a history of mural rides that the Bike Coalition has like sometimes partnered on, sometimes not. Bike Party always gets involved with the mural ride. There was a funky green sculpture thingy that was built and then fenced off and was intended to revitalize that block. And they recently finally opened it, and now it has like disco music playing, and there are people roller skating all around it. So, okay. Let's broaden it a little bit more. Sure. Who lives in my neighborhood? Yeah. Techies who use DoorDash. People like me who want to live an urban lifestyle and can only afford to rent a room in the apartment because we don't work a very high-paying job. My job pays great. It's exactly what I need, and I'm able to save, and I'm living within my means. And then, who else lives in my neighborhood? Working class folks who are stacking 1 to 5 kids or 1 to 5 family members in a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment because that's what they can afford on their wages. Yeah. Hello. Hi, Tiny. Oh my God, so cute. So what would revitalize the neighborhood? If people had more disposable income to like kick it on our block and hang out and go for walks and not be working their fingers to the bone each day. Yeah. What revitalizes a neighborhood? When your rent is $500 instead of $1,500. When you can have free time and money to enjoy your life. And so, these astronomical housing prices, that's what's killing the vibrancy of my neighborhood, I feel. Yeah. People are in survival mode, and you're not gonna go to the block party if you don't have the free time, money, and energy.
Totally.
And, if you want to work your high-paying job and don't particularly care about meeting your neighbors or going to the block party, that's within your right. I can't, yeah, I can't make a law that says like we all gotta come be a tight-knit community. Yeah. If that's what I want, I don't think I'm like really living in the right place. It's not really small town vibes, but the people who do care and who do want to host the block party and come to the block party, we find each other, and we all live within a 5 or 10 minute ride, sometimes a 20-minute ride.
This is a really interesting point of friction, and I'm curious your thoughts on how these richer incoming residents can take a more thoughtful, pro-social role in the community that they're moving into. And I don't, it's not the obligation of people who are working 2-3 jobs, having 5 people in a 1 or 2 bedroom housing unit to try and welcome the very people who are escalating their rents or causing their rents to rise. But what are some thoughts you have about connecting those 2 groups who have a common interest of residing next door to each other?
Totally. I would say group bike rides. Or things that do touch on your common interests. A litter cleanup event in the neighborhood.
How do you get the rich guys and gals to go to a cleanup event?
It's an interesting question. I mean, how also do you get the family in survival mode to go to the cleanup?
Yeah.
I think the strategies are not necessarily different. They might just manifest a little differently.
Yeah.
Make it in their interest. Be welcoming with delicious free food and fun music.
Oh, fire, yeah. Should we try dragging it up here?
I thought it was somebody's camper.
Oh my God, Max. Oh God. How's it looking?
Not great.
Thanks for getting that.
What happened here?
I don't know.
Someone's sending these here too.
Yep.
Really sprang into action. I got frozen and you just went for it.
Let's finish here. I gotta get back.
Wow, you really did your part. Yeah, jeez. You know where that train station is from here? Pretty much. Yeah, we should go left.
Left? Okay.
I can't believe you just did that.
Yikes. I mean, there was no one there. I don't know why that backpack was on fire. Whoever lit it must have pieced right out.
Yeah.
My shoe's probably fucked. I don't know. We'll wash it off and see.
We've had things like that in our alley too. And, people throw dirt on it, or, I ran inside for the fire extinguisher. That didn't work. It was like a little too much for the extinguisher to handle. Yeah, the fires are...
This is thankfully not dry, yeah. Whew. Well, what were we just talking about? Oh my God.
How do we get both like affluent neighbors and survival mode neighbors to meet each other and to just sort of break down some of the barriers? I'm not really an extroverted person. I'm pretty shy and self-conscious, or at least I grew up that way and I still feel it on the inside, even though I don't act like that. And so most days, would I rather stay home and like hang out by myself than, go out and like actively build community? Yes. I would rather read my book and journal.
No, I think a good framing, I think you said it, is community building and meeting your neighbors is like an activity for the time wealthy. Like it's a luxury to be able to afford the time and energy to be sociable and participate in events, and especially meet people you haven't met before.
And like, what's in it for me? Like, what do I get from going to this thing? I don't necessarily feel like I need more friends.
I might have to call it here. I think my camera will run out of footage, but Eleni, we put out a fire today.
That was pretty epic.
All right. Well, we'll do this again sometime soon, perhaps. Yeah.
I hope so. Yeah.
Maybe up on the Mid Peninsula.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.